Hi, fellow believers in Christ. In church, we hear a lot about loving each other, loving each other in the body, and that we have to forgive each other and not hold grudges, which is all the absolute truth. We do have to love and forgive and not hold grudges, and um, and we're not supposed to judge and all of this stuff, which is all totally true. Actually, we are supposed to judge the fruit that people have in their life, but it isn't to condemn them that we judge their fruit. We're not allowed to judge to condemn. So that's why I think it was Jesus who said, um, "Judge not, lest you be judged." And he was saying, if you condemn somebody, you'll be condemned the same amount. And Jesus said, with a cup that you measure your own condemnation of someone, then that same cup will be used to measure condemnation to you from the Lord. So if you condemn them a little, the Lord condemns you a little. If you condemn them a lot, the Lord condemns you a lot. So we're not supposed to judge, but it does say, you'll know them by their fruits, which means we have to discern or judge the fruit that a person has to know if they're really a Christian or not. And that's why I can tell when somebody's a Christian because of two things. Number one, their fruit, and number two, their testimony. Every born again Christian has the fruit of the Spirit rather than the fruit of the flesh. And every born again Christian has a testimony. So that's how you can tell if you're really with a Christian, or if you're with a wolf or somebody who's not, uh, you know, openly not a Christian. And so we do have to discern or judge fruit, as Jesus said, you will know them by their fruit. And so you can't just automatically assume that everybody in your church is a Christian, because some of them definitely aren't. And in most churches in America, most of them aren't. They're there for other reasons. They're not there because they're Christians. They're there for the perks and the programs and the social help and all that kind of stuff. They're not really there because they follow Jesus. They're there because that church has something else to offer their flesh. So anyway, but we are told to love in the body, because Jesus said the world will know you, meaning the church, by your love for one another. So if we don't love in the body, then there's something very wrong with us, and we're really not of the body if we don't love the body. So those are all good things to remember, but I just wanted to point out something that I've never heard a sermon on before, and I would like to one day, because so many Christians, this is the area they suffer in. Christians lack discernment, and that's what causes them to be preyed on by wolves. And wolves are people who pretend that they're Christians, but they're really not. And or you could get preyed on by somebody who is a Christian, but they still have demons in their life and they need deliverance still. So you have to have discernment. You have to look at the fruit of what the person does. You can never look at their heart. That's impossible. Only God knows the heart, right? But we can look at the fruit, which is, what do they actually do? What are their behaviors? That's what it is. The fruit is the behaviors. What are their behaviors? Do they have malice toward others? Are they revengeful? Are they a manipulator? Are they a liar? That's the person's fruit that you can look at. Those are the outward behaviors. You can never know their heart, but you can look at the outward behaviors and know where they stand with you and where they probably stand with God to some extent. So a lot of Christians believe that loving one another means not using discernment, and it means letting yourself be a victim, and that has nothing to do with love. Jesus never trusted Judas. He never trusted Judas. When Judas came and kissed him on the night that Judas betrayed Jesus, Jesus didn't say, "Oh, Judas, I'm glad you showed up. Thanks for the encouragement." He didn't trust Judas, and he knew what Judas was doing, and he knew who Judas was. And he said, "Why are you betraying me with a kiss?" And so if it was translated in English, that's what it would be. "Why are you betraying me with a kiss?" And so it was a rebuke that he said to Judas. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Now I feel better. Thanks for your brotherly love. You're so good." And kids, he knew the kiss was not sincere. It was a kiss of betrayal. He knew that. And so we don't have to trust people just because we've forgiven them. Jesus forgave Judas on the cross, and I believe Jesus forgave Judas before the cross because that's who Jesus is, you know, from the personal offense. Now, Judas, God hadn't forgiven Judas in that sense of sinning against God, but for the personal offense, Jesus forgave everybody. So forgiving Judas and trusting him are two different things. If you have a Judas in your life, you are not commanded to trust them. You you are commanded to forgive. You're commanded not to condemn, which is that kind of judgment. But you're never commanded to trust anybody except the Lord Himself. And in the entire Bible, you will find no command whatsoever in Old or New Testament to trust any person or organization or institution. You're only commanded to trust the Lord. That is a command, but you're not commanded to trust people. And so a lot of Christians get taught and they believe and they confuse love and forgiveness with trust, which is a completely different thing. Jesus did not trust the Pharisees at all. At all. The Pharisees were not his friends. He didn't trust them. He didn't look to them for anything. He didn't teach them anything to be his disciples. He rebuked them in front of the other people who he was teaching because the Pharisees weren't teachable. Their hearts were too hard. So he used them as example to rebuke in front of the others who he was teaching. So he didn't trust the Pharisees either. Yet he always loved the Pharisees, and he was always forgiving, and he forgave everybody on the cross. And those Pharisees were at the cross mocking him, and yet he forgave them. But trusting and forgiving are two different things. So I just wanted to encourage you in that. If someone is abusing you in some way, you don't have to. Now, Jesus did say turn the other cheek, but what did he mean by that? Did he mean to keep inviting the abuse? Absolutely no. Did he mean to not have boundaries? Absolutely no. Even Jesus had boundaries. You know that Jesus had three who he kept with him at all times. They saw it was Peter, James, and John. They saw the transfiguration. They were the only ones with him who saw the transfiguration. They were the only ones with him when the girl was raised from the dead, who was in the second floor of her house. And I think there's another incident where they were the only ones with him they were mentioned a lot as a group, Peter, James, and John, because that was the inner circle. So Jesus had boundaries. There was only three who he allowed in his inner circle. There was a boundary with the other disciples. They were all close to him, but there was only three in the inner circle. The other 9 were in an outer circle of disciples. And then there was hundreds and thousands of other disciples. There were 120 disciples of men and women on the day of Pentecost, but only 11 of those in that room were in Jesus' close knit group of 12 when there was Judas. So he had boundaries. Some people were in the tightest inner circle, like Peter, James, and John. And some men were in the group of 12 that later became 11 on the day of Pentecost. And some were in the group of 120 on the day of Pentecost. And there was actually hundreds more. There were hundreds of disciples that Jesus had. It wasn't just 120, but there was only 120 gathered on the day of Pentecost. So anyway, Jesus had boundaries too. Not everybody got to see the transfiguration. And you and I can have boundaries as well. And it's no sin whatsoever to have boundaries with people who are abusers and liars and users. So you forgive from the heart, you pray for them, you wish them well, and yes, you turn the other cheek, which means what Jesus did. Jesus never defended himself, he never protected himself, and he never sought revenge. That's what turning the other cheek means. It means that person can hurt you over and over and over, and you will never seek revenge. You will never try to protect yourself, and you will never defend yourself or let anyone else defend you. Because even when Peter tried to defend Jesus by cutting the ear off of the guy with a sword, with Peter's sword, he cut off the ear of one of the people who were trying to arrest Jesus. Jesus rebuked Peter and put the ear back on and healed the man. So because Jesus did never allow to himself to be protected. You know, Jesus had no bodyguards. There's a lot of pastors with bodyguards, but Jesus never had bodyguards. He wouldn't let Peter be a bodyguard. And that's why I don't believe in protection and walking around in fear and turning my dog into a watchdog or a protection dog. I won't allow my dog to do that. He has to be friendly and cheerful to everybody. If he growls, he gets in trouble. Now there's been a few times where I've let him growl, but it was for very good reason. But on a general basis, I never ever allow him to get defensive or protective, because I don't believe in that, because that's not the way of Jesus Christ. So anyway, turning the other cheek is what Jesus did, but it doesn't mean making yourself a victim, making yourself a doormat, inviting trouble. It doesn't mean knowing that someone is taking advantage of you and enabling them in it. That doesn't mean that. So you don't have to answer the phone call. You don't have to answer the text message. You don't have to let the person move in with you. You don't have to bail them out of jail again. You don't have to stay in that relationship if it's taking you to hell in a handbasket, or to hell not in a handbasket. Either way, you don't have to make bad choices and not have boundaries with people. So I just wanted to encourage you. Yes, absolutely, we should forgive. Absolutely, we shouldn't be judging in the sense of condemning. We judge fruit, but we don't judge the heart, because we don't know the heart. And absolutely, we need to turn the other cheek, which means not defending ourselves, protecting ourselves, allowing anyone else to protect us who isn't God, or seeking revenge. Jesus never sought revenge. But we still have to practice discernment, which means judging the fruit. And it's perfectly Christian to not trust other people. If they haven't earned your trust and they don't deserve it, you don't need to trust them. There is no commandment anywhere in the entire Bible that tells you to trust people who don't deserve it, or at all, for that matter. We only have to trust God. And we are allowed to have boundaries with people and not enable people to be abusive and all of that. So I hope that gives you some peace about the relationships that you might be in, knowing how to handle them and how to deal with people. Because just look at the example of Jesus. How did he react to the Pharisees? How did he react to Judas? Did he have boundaries with people? Yes, he did. You know, remember when he healed the man at when he crossed Gadarenes or something like that, was the place where he healed the man who had all the legion of demons, and Jesus sent the demons into the pigs, and then the man said, "Can I follow you? Can I follow you like your disciple?" And Jesus said, "No, you may not. I want you to go back to your town and tell everybody else what the Lord has done for you." So Jesus had boundaries with that man. That man had just been delivered of a legion of demons. He wasn't ready to be in Jesus' inner circle. He wanted to, but he wasn't ready for it. And Jesus said, "No, you're not to come with me, but you are to go out and proclaim the good news and share your testimony with others so that they can get saved." So Jesus had boundaries. He has boundaries with all of us. That's why he only calls friend those who obey him. But those who don't obey him are not his friend. He isn't friends with everybody in the world. He's only friends with those who obey him. So you and I can have boundaries too. Anyway, I hope that blesses you. God bless you.